A week before college, my parents told me, "We used your tuition for your brother's venture. Be proud you're supporting the family." I didn't argue. I just walked away. A year later, his company collapsed and I was making six figures without a degree. Now, they won't stop calling. I was 18, filled with all the naive hope in the world. I still remember every single detail of that day, from the way the morning sunlight hit the kitchen counter to the sickly sweet smell of slightly burned toast. My mom had this smile plastered on her face, the fakest smile I'd ever seen, like a hostess greeting guests she secretly wished would just disappear. My dad, on the other hand, was just tapping his wedding ring against his coffee mug, clearly rehearsing some grand speech. There was a weird tension in the air, the kind you feel just before a storm hits, when the birds go quiet and the pressure drops. I should have recognized it, but I was 18 and still believed in things like fairness and family loyalty. I was even wearing my university hoodie that morning, a brand new navy blue one with a school crest. $45 I probably couldn't afford, but I was so damn proud. After 4 years of killing myself with AP classes and extracurriculars, I'd actually done it. Accepted into a real university with a solid program. I was literally 1 week away from moving into my dorm. I had spent the entire previous year obsessively planning every single detail of college life. Color-coded spreadsheets for everything: course registration, housing, meal plans, textbooks, a detailed budget for the first semester. I'd registered for orientation the first day it opened. I'd bought secondhand textbooks, saving hundreds of dollars. I worked nights at Morrison's grocery store, stocking shelves, picking up every extra shift I could, saving $1,700 just for the little things: dorm decorations, a decent laptop for my computer science courses, even a tiny dorm fridge because I'd read that campus dining got old fast. My room was covered in post-it notes detailing what to pack, what to buy, which professors to seek out, which clubs to join. My roommate and I had already connected online. I'd even memorized bus routes from campus to downtown in case I needed more work. For most of high school, I'd been the invisible, responsible one. The kid who stayed home studying while everyone else partied. I joined every club, not because I cared about leadership, but because I thought it would look good on applications. I took every AP class, even though they were crushing my soul. Why? Because everyone said that's what you had to do to get into a good school. I thought if I worked hard, if I didn't make waves, it would mean something. I thought they would keep their promises, like paying for the tuition they'd been saving for since I was 12. So, when Mom finally said, "Blake, sweetie, your dad and I need to talk to you about something important," I just smiled, took another bite of eggs, and had absolutely no reason to be suspicious. No reason to brace for the absolute gut punch that was coming. Dad leaned forward, his face calm, that familiar expression he always wore when he was about to deliver some life lesson. Then he said it. Just like that, one sentence, cutting through all my dreams like a knife. "We gave your tuition money to your brother. His business needs it more right now." I didn't respond. Just blinked. Stared at the salt shaker, unable to look at either of them. I thought it was a joke, some twisted lesson. But when I finally looked up, Mom had this strange expression. Not guilty, not embarrassed. Something closer to proud. "You should be happy," she said, her voice unnervingly bright. "You're supporting the family in a big way. This is what being part of something bigger than yourself looks like." That's when it hit me. They weren't telling me this because they felt bad. They were telling me because they thought I should be proud. In their eyes, I wasn't a kid with dreams anymore. I was just convenient. Let me back up a bit so you understand the full picture of dysfunction here. My older brother, Kyle, is 6 years older than me, and he was the undisputed golden child. Every mistake he made was reframed as a learning experience or creative detour. He never faced consequences. I'd bring home straight A's, and he'd get a pizza party for remembering to take out the trash once. When I was 13 and forgot to mow the lawn because I had a huge exam, I was grounded for 2 weeks. When Kyle, at 19, crashed Dad's car while texting, Dad bought him a newer, safer car because the old one clearly wasn't handling right. When Kyle dropped out of college after one semester, claiming traditional education stifled his entrepreneurial spirit, my parents acted like he'd been accepted into an exclusive Stanford accelerator program. Never mind that he'd failed 3 classes. The narrative became, Kyle was too innovative for conventional education, too forward-thinking to waste time in lectures. They poured money into his startup like it was an unlimited trust fund. $5,000 for a logo, $10,000 for essential tech equipment, which turned out to be 2 Mac Pros and a standing desk that cost more than my entire bedroom furniture. Then $20,000 for a trendy co-working loft where Kyle could network. Every few months, Kyle would come back with his hand out, a new pitch, and they always said yes. Always. Even when Mom's car was on its last legs, they delayed buying her a new one because Kyle needed another $5,000 for a marketing campaign that generated 0 customers. His company, Streamflow, a project management tool, never took off. There were already 50 tools doing the same thing, most of them better. But Kyle convinced himself and my parents that he was building the next big thing. So, when I got accepted into a competitive university and my parents assured me they had the first year covered, I believed them. Why wouldn't I? I'd followed every rule, played it safe, stayed in my lane. And in return, I was supposed to get my shot. Instead, I got a lecture about sacrifice served with cold eggs. I asked one question, just one, so, what am I supposed to do now? Dad looked at me like I was being unreasonable. Take a gap year. Get a job. Plenty of kids your age need time to figure things out. I already figured it out, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I'm supposed to move in next week. We know, Mom said, softly, as if that made it any better. And we're really sorry about the timing. But you're smart, Blake. You'll find another way. The worst part wasn't the decision itself. It was how they acted like this was my opportunity to grow. Like being robbed of my future was some kind of character-building exercise. Like I should thank them for the privilege of watching my brother burn through my college fund. I didn't yell. Didn't argue. Didn't even raise my voice. I just nodded, excused myself, walked upstairs, and closed my door. That was the moment everything changed. Something inside me snapped. Not in some dramatic movie way with smashed mirrors, but quieter. More final. Like a switch clicking off. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat there, staring at the ceiling, going over every conversation I'd ever had with my parents that suddenly felt fake. All the times they told me they were proud. All the times they said, we've got your back. It was like realizing your safety net was made of paper and you'd been performing tricks 50 feet in the air the whole time. Around 3 a.m., I got up and started actually looking at my options. Not fantasy options, but real-world options for an 18-year-old with no safety net. Student loans? I'd need a cosigner, and guess who wasn't signing anything for me? Scholarships? Deadlines had passed. Working full-time and taking night classes? Maybe, but that would mean 5 or 6 years for a degree, assuming I didn't burn out. Every option sucked. Every single one. But sitting there at 3 a.m., doing the math on how completely I'd been screwed, I realized something important. I didn't actually need their permission to leave. I was legally an adult. I had some money saved. I wasn't chained to this house, or their expectations, or their warped sense of family loyalty. The next morning, I started packing. Not for college. For something else entirely. No big announcement, no dramatic confrontation. Just quietly sorting my things into 2 categories, essential and disposable. Clothes, laptop, important documents, into my 2 suitcases. Childhood stuff, trophies, sentimental junk, all stayed. I wasn't sentimental anymore. It took me 3 hours to pack up 18 years of my life. 3 hours. That's all it was worth, apparently. I found my birth certificate and social security card in Dad's filing cabinet, took both without asking. Not stealing. They were mine. But I knew if I asked, they'd find some reason to maintain control. I left the house with 2 suitcases, the $1,000 I'd saved from Morrison's, and one rule permanently burned into my mind. Never rely on anyone who treats you like a backup plan. Mom caught me loading my beat-up Honda Civic around noon. She came out, dish towel in hand, confused. Blake, honey, where are you going? She asked, like I was just running an errand. Moving out. Her face did this complicated thing where she tried to look sympathetic and annoyed at the same time. Moving out? What do you mean? You're supposed to leave for school next week. Not going to school anymore, remember? You gave away my tuition. Well, you can't just leave. Where will you go? What about your job? I'll figure it out. Blake, don't be dramatic. Come inside and we'll talk about this like adults. That line almost made me laugh. Talk about it like adults? Like the adults who made a major financial decision about my future without consulting me? Like the adults who'd been lying to me about saving for college while Kyle burned through their money? Nothing to talk about, I said, slamming my trunk shut. Dad appeared then, walking down from the driveway. Son, your mother's right. This is an overreaction. Is it? I looked him directly in the eye. You took $18,000 that was supposed to be mine and gave it to Kyle without asking, without even warning me until a week before I was supposed to start school. That's not an overreaction. That's a natural consequence. We're still your parents, Dad said, his voice getting that edge it always got when someone questioned his authority. You don't get to just walk away from family. Watch me. I got in my car before either of them could respond. Started the engine, backed out of the driveway while Mom stood there, wringing that dish towel. Dad's face went red with the kind of anger he only showed when he couldn't control something. I drove away and didn't look back. Not once. I moved in with Tyler, a guy I worked with at Morrison's, who had a spare room across town. It wasn't glamorous. No AC in September. A futon that creaked if I breathed too hard. A bathroom with a persistent mildew smell. But it was mine. More importantly, it wasn't theirs. Tyler was cool about it. He just showed me the room, handed me a spare key, and said rent was $300 a month cash. Not exactly legal, but I wasn't in a position to be picky. That beige room with its terrible futon felt like absolute freedom. I didn't cut them off completely at first. They texted a few times that first week. How's the job hunt going? Let us know if you need anything. Then, one from Dad, your brother's really excited about this new funding round he's working on. Investor presentation went well. That last one made me laugh bitterly. Kyle was excited? Of course he was. He'd just gotten an $18,000 cash injection courtesy of my future. And investors were apparently interested now because he finally had enough runway to look semi-legitimate. I stopped responding after day 3. Not out of spite initially, but because I had actual work to do. Real, survival-level work. The kind that didn't involve begging my parents for validation. Here's what most people don't understand about being broke at 18 with zero safety net. It clarifies things real fast. You stop caring about comfort or appearances or what your family thinks. You just focus on not becoming homeless. Then, if you're smart and angry enough, you focus on more than just survival. I picked up 2 jobs within the first week. Kept my Morrison's gig, 30 hours a week, 6 p.m. to midnight, $8.50 an hour. Then added weekend shifts at a warehouse loading trucks for $15 an hour, cash under the table. The warehouse job wasn't exactly legal, but nobody asked questions, and I needed money immediately. It was brutal. Lifting boxes, loading trucks, trying not to get crushed by forklifts. No climate control, so by September, it was 90 degrees inside. I was soaked in sweat within 15 minutes. Between both jobs, I was pulling 60-hour weeks, sleeping maybe 5 hours a night on that terrible futon. I'd finish at Morrison's at midnight, get home at 12:30 a.m., set my alarm for 5:45 a.m. for weekend warehouse shifts. Sunday nights, I'd go straight from the warehouse back to Morrison's, just changing clothes in my car, using baby wipes to make myself semi-presentable. My body was falling apart. My back hurt constantly. My hands were always covered in cuts and scrapes. I'd come home too tired to even microwave food, just collapse on that creaky futon, fully clothed, and pass out. But here's the thing, I wasn't miserable. I was angry. And anger, when you channel it right and don't let it eat you alive, is pure rocket fuel. During those rare moments when I wasn't working, my 15-minute lunch breaks at the warehouse, or the dead hour at Morrison's between 9 and 10 p.m., I was on my phone. Not scrolling social media or playing games like a normal 18-year-old. I was learning. I started with YouTube tutorials about digital marketing. SEO, content creation, copywriting, terms I'd barely heard of. Then I moved to Reddit threads about freelancing, people sharing their income breakdowns and strategies. I found articles about people who'd built entire businesses from nothing with just a laptop and an internet connection. That's when I discovered content creation as an actual business model. Not the influencer stuff, but businesses that needed writers, designers, video editors. Companies paying real money for people who could make their websites look professional instead of like they'd been designed by the owner's nephew in 2003. I started on Fiverr, offering to write product descriptions for $5 a pop. My first gig came 3 days later. A dropshipping store needed descriptions for 50 items. Paid me $250 total. It took me 12 hours to finish, but I did it. The client left a 5-star review. Then another gig came, then another. Within 2 weeks, I was making more on Fiverr than at the grocery store. I quit Morrison's, kept the warehouse job for stable income, but shifted my focus entirely to building a real freelance business. I started charging more, took on bigger projects, learning faster than I ever did in any classroom. 3 months in, I'd saved $5,000. More money than I'd ever had in my life, and nobody could take it from me. Around this time, I met Hannah through a freelance writing forum on Reddit. Someone tagged me as a decent copywriter. Hannah reached out. She was 22, had dropped out of art school after 2 years, realizing she was spending $50,000 to learn things she could teach herself online. Now she was doing graphic design for startups. We started collaborating. I handled the copy, she handled the visuals. Clients loved the package deal. We could deliver everything faster and cheaper than traditional agencies. Our first joint project for an e-commerce company, a complete website redesign, we quoted $3,500 and delivered in 2 weeks. They were thrilled, left 5-star reviews, and referred us to 2 other companies. That's when things started clicking. We weren't just freelancers scrambling for gigs anymore. We were becoming a team that delivered consistent quality. One night, about 3 months after I'd moved out, Hannah and I met at this cheap diner to work on a proposal. We were both exhausted. She'd been pulling 16-hour days. I was running on 4 hours of sleep between the warehouse and my projects. We ordered coffee and fries. That's all we could afford. Spread our laptops on the sticky table. About an hour in, Hannah closed her laptop and looked at me intense. We should stop freelancing for other people, she said. And start our own thing. Like what? I asked, genuinely confused. A content agency. We find the clients. We set the rates. We build the systems. Stop being hired hands for $50 an hour and start being the ones doing the hiring. We already work well together. We have testimonials. We know what clients actually want. Why keep making other people money when we could be making it ourselves? It sounded completely insane. We were both broke 20-somethings with no business experience, no capital, no connections. Hannah had debt from art school. I was still working 2 manual labor jobs and sleeping on a futon. Neither of us had any business starting a company. But the more we talked about it over those progressively colder fries, the more it made sense. We knew the work. We knew the market rates. We knew what separated good agencies from bad ones. Communication, reliability, and actually delivering what you promise. What would we even call it? I asked. We brainstormed names for 20 minutes. Most were terrible. Then Hannah said, what about Content Forge? Like, we forge content, build it from scratch, make it strong. I repeated it a few times. Content Forge. Yeah, that actually worked. Sounded professional, but not pretentious. Memorable. Okay, I said. So, we're really doing this? Unless you want to keep loading trucks until your back gives out at 30. 2 weeks later, we registered Content Forge as an LLC. Cost us $50, split it. Built a basic website using a free template that Hannah customized. Wrote case studies based on our best freelance projects, reframing them as Content Forge success stories. Our pitch was brutally simple. Your website looks like it was made by someone's cousin in 2008. We can fix that. We started cold emailing local businesses with terrible online presences. Restaurants with MySpace-era websites. Real estate agencies using stock photos from 2005. HVAC companies whose contact forms didn't even work. The response rate was garbage at first. Maybe one reply for every 100 emails. Most ignored us. Some told us to get lost. One guy wrote a 3-paragraph rant about millennials. But that one reply per 100 would lead to a consultation call. And roughly half those consultations led to paid projects. Our first official Content Forge client was a regional plumbing company that needed monthly blog posts, social media content, and email newsletters. They agreed to pay us $1,500 a month. That didn't sound like much, but it was revolutionary for 2 reasons. First, it was recurring revenue. Second, it proved the model worked. If we could land 1 retainer client, we could land 5. If we could land 5, we could land 20. Hannah quit her day job. I quit the warehouse. We went all in. Things started moving fast. We hired our first contractor, a video editor Hannah knew from art school. Then a second writer. Then a project manager. Content Forge went from a side hustle to an actual company with employees, processes, and profit margins. My parents had no idea. Neither did Kyle. I'd gone completely dark on social media. No posts, no updates, no breadcrumb trail showing what I was building. As far as they knew, I was probably still stocking shelves somewhere, bitter about the college thing, which is exactly what I wanted them to think. Meanwhile, Kyle's business was imploding in slow motion. I knew this because Tyler, my roommate, was friends with someone at the startup incubator where Kyle had an office. The rumors were brutal. Kyle had burned through my tuition money in 4 months. Spent it on team-building retreats, fancy office furniture, and a marketing campaign that generated 0 paying customers. Streamflow had maybe 10 active users, all friends and family testing it out of pity. The product was buggy. The interface confusing. Kyle kept pivoting every few weeks. 6 months after taking my money, he went back to our parents asking for more. They gave it to him. I know because Mom accidentally texted me instead of Kyle during one of her group message fails, transferring the $8,000 now. Tell your father it's from the home equity line. They'd taken out a second mortgage to fund his nonsense. My college fund wasn't enough. Now they were gambling their house. I didn't respond to the text. Just screenshotted it and filed it away. Evidence. For later. By the time I turned 20, Content Forge was generating $30,000 a month in revenue. We'd moved into a real office, nothing fancy, just a converted warehouse with decent Wi-Fi. Hannah and I split equity 50-50 and took modest salaries, reinvesting everything else into growth. I bought a used car, nothing flashy, just a reliable Honda. Got my own apartment, with actual furniture. Started saving money in a real investment account. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Every decision, every success, every failure, all mine. No one could take credit for it. No one could claim they'd helped me get there. I'd built this from nothing in spite of them. Then came the wedding invitation. My cousin Ashley's. A big, fancy affair at some vineyard. It arrived at my old address, my parents' house. Mom forwarded it to me with a note. It would be nice if you came. Family misses you. Family misses you. Right. The family that stole my future and told me to be grateful. But I decided to go. Not because I missed them. Not because I wanted to reconcile. But because I was ready for them to see exactly what they'd missed. I didn't tell them I was coming. Just RSVP'd directly to Ashley and showed up the day of the wedding, looking like someone who had their life together. Good suit, confident walk, the kind of presence that makes people look twice. The venue was one of those upscale barn conversions. White string lights, exposed wooden beams, mason jar centerpieces. The parking lot was packed. I'd driven up solo in my reliable Honda Civic, still the same car I'd had at 18, but now paid off and properly maintained. I parked it between a BMW and a Mercedes, which felt weirdly appropriate. I walked in wearing a charcoal gray suit I'd bought off the rack and had tailored to actually fit. Nothing fancy, but it looked professional. Combined with a decent haircut and the confidence that comes from knowing your bank account has 6 figures instead of 3, I looked like someone who had their life together. The ceremony space was packed with relatives I hadn't seen in years. Most of them probably assumed I dropped out, moved back home, maybe working retail, living paycheck to paycheck, the black sheep who couldn't cut it. The kid who'd had a full ride to college, but, as the story likely got distorted, couldn't handle the pressure. I scanned the room methodically until I found them. Mom and Dad at a table near the bar, looking older and more tired than I remembered. Dad's hair almost completely gray. Mom had this tightness around her eyes. They looked like people who'd made a series of expensive mistakes and were still paying for them. Kyle was there too, standing near their table, nursing a drink, staring at his phone. He'd lost weight, but not in a healthy way. His suit looked slightly too big, like he'd bought it when he had more money. Our eyes met across the room. He blinked hard, like he couldn't quite process what he was seeing. I gave him a single nod. Not friendly, not hostile, just acknowledgement. Mom noticed me about 30 seconds later. Her face went through this fascinating progression. Confusion. Who is that? Recognition. Wait, is that Blake? Automatic smile. Must maintain social appearances. Then something close to panic. Oh no, he's actually here. She stood up so fast she nearly knocked over her chair, started walking toward me with this forced brightness that didn't reach her eyes. Blake, she said, slightly breathless. Hi. I didn't know you were coming. We didn't see your name on the RSVP list. Wasn't sure I'd make it, I said smoothly. But one of the event sponsors invited me personally. Thought it'd be a good networking opportunity. Her smile faltered. Event sponsors? Yeah. Content Forge is handling some of the promotional work for the venue's expansion into the event marketing space. They're trying to book more weddings and corporate events, so we're developing their content strategy. I said it casually, like it was no big deal. Like I hadn't spent 2 years building a company from nothing while they were probably telling relatives I'd gone off the grid or was finding myself. The look on her face was everything I'd needed to see. Not quite understanding, but knowing something had shifted. I wasn't the broke kid who'd left with 2 suitcases anymore. Dad joined her a moment later. His smile was tighter, more controlled. Years of practicing professional courtesy in business settings, I guess. Son, he said, extending his hand like we were business associates instead of family. It's good to see you. I shook his hand briefly. Firm grip, eye contact, all the corporate power play stuff he probably thought mattered. Likewise, I replied. He tried to ask more. Where was I living? What had I been up to? The generic catch-up questions you ask when you haven't seen someone in years. But before he could get too far, the event planner approached with a clipboard. Mr. Morrison, she said, looking at me. That's me. Just wanted to confirm your table placement. You're at table 12 with the other vendor representatives and sponsors. We really appreciate Content Forge's partnership on this project. She said it loud enough that my parents definitely heard every word. Dad's face did something complicated. Mom looked like she'd been slapped. The wedding reception unfolded like a stage play, and I was done playing the background character. My parents sat stiffly at their table, barely touching their food. Kyle hovered nearby, clearly rattled, glancing toward me every few minutes like I was a ghost he couldn't quite banish. A few cousins made small talk, polite, curious, awkward. One of them, Brandon, leaned in with a smirk and said, "Didn't you skip college or something? What are you up to now?" I didn't say much. Just gestured toward the Content Forge display at the sponsor table, a clean banner with our company name, a QR code, and a brief description. Digital content agency specializing in scalable brand storytelling. Brandon scanned the code out of curiosity. It led to our website, which prominently featured a case study titled, From $0 to $500,000 ARR, How Losing Everything at 18 Forced Me to Build Something Real. The case study was intentionally vague. No names, no direct accusations. Just a clean, data-driven narrative about a young person who lost their college opportunity due to family investment priorities, turned to freelancing out of necessity, and built a successful agency through sheer determination. But anyone with half a brain could read between the lines. And judging by the look on Kyle's face when he scanned the code, oh yes, I saw him do it, he definitely could read between the lines. The fallout started 2 days later. A text from Dad, "We need to talk face to face." I didn't reply. A text from mom, your post. People are asking questions. Please take it down. That made me laugh. Take it down? After they'd framed me as the selfless little brother who nobly stepped aside for the future entrepreneur of the family? No. This was the reckoning. And it wasn't even personal anymore. It was structural, clean, unavoidable. Because the moment that case study went viral, and it did, shared across LinkedIn, Reddit, and several business forums, people started connecting dots. Hannah told me Kyle's former contractor, the one he ghosted after promising stock equity, shared the link on Twitter with the caption, "Oh, so this is why he never paid me." A day later, the local startup incubator that had been considering Kyle for a second round of funding posted a quiet update on their website, pausing external investments, pending internal review. Translation: Kyle wasn't just off the list, he was toxic. Meanwhile, several of Kyle's early investors, mostly local business owners my dad played cards with, were not happy. The case study didn't name them, but it traced the path of money through phrases like family-backed startups with no KPIs and early investors promised high returns with zero oversight. Anyone involved knew exactly who that was about. One of them, Dr. Phillips, apparently cornered my dad at a neighborhood barbecue and asked point-blank, "Did you give Blake's tuition to Kyle's startup?" Dad didn't answer. But silence in those circles speaks volumes. I started hearing from people. Old teachers, high school classmates, even one of Kyle's exes. They all reached out with some variation of, "I read your article." I had no idea. Because that was the power of truth. Not shouted, not dramatized. Just documented. Calm. Measured. Unapologetic. Cole tried to respond, sort of. He published a blog post titled, "Entrepreneurship is Messy, Lessons from a Startup That Didn't Go as Planned." It was full of vague apologies and corporate jargon, pushing boundaries, building under pressure, learning from challenges. No specifics, no accountability. Just word salad. No one bought it. The comment section was brutal. This is what happens when you play with other people's money. Your brother had every right to speak up. You didn't fail because you took risks. You failed because you took people for granted. My parents didn't respond publicly. That wasn't their style. But they felt it. The calls stopped. The texts dried up. Mom unfriended half the extended family on Facebook. Dad shut down his LinkedIn. At first, I thought it was shame, but it wasn't. It was control slipping through their fingers. Quietly. Relentlessly. So, tell me, if you were in my shoes, faced with that kind of betrayal, would you have reacted the same way? Or would you have found a different path? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious to hear them.